Thank you guys all so much for coming today. So before we begin, I just want to cover the few quick housekeeping notes that we always do. So I'm pretty sure everyone here has already been here before, but just in case, hello and welcome everyone. My name's Linding. I'm a Masters of Counselling student. Now today's session is not a part of my course, it is part of something that I just wanted to do for community, just to bring to people if they can't go to therapy for whatever reason. They just need a safe space to feel heard, connected, and just get some guidance. So it will be recorded for educational purposes, and it'll go up on YouTube if you ever want to rewatch anything. Only I will be in the frame, so none of your faces will be visible. If you do choose to share something, it will not be included in the final recording, so will stay within this space. And lastly, we'll be discussing mental health, which can, of course, sometimes bring up some strong emotions. So if at any point you're feeling unwell, please prioritize your own well-being. You're free to step out, take a breather, get something to drink, or just leave entirely. It is up to you. Just tune into what you need and honor that. So, right. Do you guys know that moment when your mouth says yes, but every cell in your body is just whispering, no, 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 why? You feel that yourself start to nod before your values actually catch up. You keep the peace and you keep the plans, and then you keep the resentment. So, quick little show of hands. How many of you said yes just to avoid disappointing someone? Maybe even to feel a little bit angry or drained a little bit later. Yeah, thank you. That honesty is very important. And so this is the truth that we're working with today. Barriers or boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges of safety. They are the way you tell your nervous system and everyone around you, I can stay present and still be a person. When you draw a line, you are not pushing people away. You are making connections sustainable long-term and short-term too. In nervous system language, a clear limit is a safety cue that settles your system so you can stay engaged with whatever it is that you're doing, rather than being armored and defensive. So I want to anchor us in with a line that I love from Dr. David Puder. Boundaries keep us in relationship, not out. And that's the paradox that so many of us were never taught. Good fences don't end relationships. They preserve them. And let's name that inner conflict that trips so many of us: guilt. And not the kind that follows doing harm, but the kind that flares when you're just simply feeling like you've disappointed somebody. That guilt is not proof that you're being selfish or that you're failing at being a kind person. It's your attachment system and conditioning that's firing. So decades of learning that safety comes from pleasing, it comes from harmonizing, comes from soothing. The body reads other people's disappointment as danger, so it urges you to comply. That is a nervous system misfire between connection and self-protection. So today we're going to retrain that link. And a quick map of the science in more easy to understand words. Your body is running a constant background scan, saying and asking, am I safe? And it takes cues from your behavior. When you set a calm, clear boundary that's consistent, you send your system a new message. I am safe to choose. That shifts you into a social engagement state, the part of your physiology that supports clear thinking, compassion, and steady voice. Boundaries in this view, then, are not moral stances. They are relational tools that free your prefrontal cortex to do its best work. So a picture you can hold in your mind for this is imagine your life as a home with property lines. On your property is your body, your time, your money, your energy, your preferences, your yes and your no. And then off your property is other people's feelings, their choices, and their reactions. Healthy fences don't make you cold. They make you clear about what you can responsibly care for. You water your grass, your neighbour waters theirs. That clarity is kindness. So let's reflect for just a few seconds. What has saying yes out of guilt cost you in peace, in energy, in self-trust, or authenticity? Think about where you overextended. Where did resentment end up replacing warmth? And where did you abandon something important to you? So here's our commitment for the next 50 minutes. We're going to replace that guilt-driven compliance with value-driven clarity. So we'll do it in a way that calms your body, respects your relationships, and gives you language that you can use this week. And ultimately see boundaries as bridges and safety as the path back to presence. Now, most of us didn't learn boundaries. We learned compliance. So we were praised for being good, for being easy, for being no trouble. And here's the core insight for this section. Guilt is taught. Assertiveness usually isn't. And that's not a character flaw. It's a curriculum problem. So families, schools, and culture often use guilt induction to shape your behavior. You hurt my feelings. Look what you've done. I expected better. Over time, your body starts treating other people's disappointment as an emergency signal. Without explicit training in assertiveness, guilt becomes the default alarm whenever you risk displeasing somebody. So let's reframe that for a second, because guilt does not equal wrongdoing. The guilt that surges when you say no is not evidence that you're cruel. It's evidence that your nervous system has paired safety with pleasing. In other words, your biology is doing its best with the associations that it has. Boundaries, then, are not acts of rebellion. They are acts of reconditioning. So each clear, calm limit sends a new message to your system. I can choose and still be safe. And over time, that shifts you from threat-driven compliance to value-driven clarity. And here's another layer that's important to discuss. Trait patterns matter. How many of you have heard of the big 5 personality traits before? Somewhat. So, for those of you who haven't, it's one of the most well-established and scientifically validated models in psychology. It measures 5 broad dimensions of openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism that often describe and can predict how we tend to think, feel, and behave. But it is a spectrum, so everyone will be on the line somewhere. And understanding where you sit can reveal how your temperament interacts with boundaries. So if you lean high in agreeableness, you're wired for care and harmony, which is an absolutely beautiful thing. Do not get me wrong. And you'll also feel stronger internal pressure to say yes, to smooth things over, and to avoid conflict. And that vulnerability isn't pathology. It's your temperament meeting that curriculum training. The work is to keep your gifts, your empathy, and your warmth, because they are gifts, while adding the skill of limit setting. And there's also a big difference between a genuine yes and a guilty yes. As Dr. David Pewter puts it, when we say yes out of guilt, we're complying with a harsh conscience. rather than acting from a place of inner consent. That's why resentment follows. Your body can tell when your mouth betrays your values. And automatic people pleasing collapses the space between the ask and your answer. So we restore that space with a micro intervention. The pause. It only takes 30 seconds. And it's a simple scripted pause that buys back your time and your choice. So what can you say? You can say, let me get back to you on that one. That's really interesting. Just give me some time to think on that, I need to check my schedule just for a second. Or, you know what, I'll confirm by tomorrow. And why does this work? It reactivates inhibitory control, the brake pedal essentially. So before your autopilot yes just seems to escape your mouth. The pause itself is emotional regulation in action. Arousal drops, your perspective returns, and your values come back online. And to make this reliable, we add a little bit of structure from behavioral science. So we can use the if-then installation to turn willpower into autopilot. So you can write tiny rules that pre-link common triggers to protective responses. So if I'm asked on the spot, then I say, let me get back to you on that one. If a request comes after 7 p.m., then I reply in the morning. If I feel that chest tightening guilt squeeze, then I take 2 slow breaths before speaking. This is classic implementation interventions in action. We're moving the skill from effort, something you have to actually consciously think about, to automation. So it works even when you're stressed or under pressure. Now, a crucial behavioral truth is that verbal boundaries do not work if your behavior contradicts them. If you say, please don't call during work, but you answer the phone anyway, you've just trained that other person and your own nervous system that boundary wasn't actually real. Behavior is the true teacher. Let calls go to voicemail. Send a neutral auto reply and respond when you said you would. Consistency is kindness. It removes confusion and stabilizes relationships. And to keep this compassionate, we want to pair every boundary with a regulating cue. So you can place a hand to heart, drop your shoulders, take a deep breath, remind your system, I can care about people and still choose. That somatic body pairing is how we recondition guilt into calm authority over time. So you don't need to become disagreeable to have boundaries. You need clarity, consistency, and a body that recognizes no as safe. And so if guilt was the training that tethered safety to pleasing, this is where we lay a new track. Boundaries as self-worth in action. A boundary is not a rejection of the other. It is an affirmation of the self. Every time you hold a limit calmly and consistently, you are telling your nervous system, I am worthy of protection, even while I can still care. Over repetitions, that message becomes embodied, less of a concept and more of a reflex. And this is how boundaries stop feeling like miniature little breakups and start feeling like everyday self-respect. So you can think of boundaries the way you think of your immune system. It's selective, it's intelligent, and it's life-preserving. Good boundaries let in what nourishes, respect, reciprocity, repair, and it keeps out what harms. So disrespect, coercion, chronic overreaching. So without them, we catch every emotional virus that passes us by. Every urgency becomes our emergency. Every mood becomes our weather. The work is to cultivate selective permeability, not defensive isolation. A living gate policy that opens to care and closes to contempt or manipulation. So let's make this precise and usable. Boundaries often operate on 3 layers. So the first, we have the behavioral boundary, which is what you do. You don't answer late calls. You let a text wait until morning. You leave the room if somebody starts yelling. Now, why does this matter? The nervous system learns most from behavioral contingencies. So actions, again, teach faster than words. Consistent behavior stabilizes the relationship by removing any mixed signals. And then we have a verbal boundary, which is what you say. I'm unavailable after 7. I don't discuss that topic. I can help Saturday for 1 hour. Use the short, kind, clear now rule. Just a few words in a warm tone with an unmistakable message delivered in the moment. This keeps correction light and swift, preventing resentment from accumulating. And then we have a psychological boundary, which is what you hold internally. Their emotion is theirs to steer. I can still absolutely care about them without needing to fix. This is self-other differentiation. Staying connected without fusing. Empathetic without absorbing. It protects your mind from being overrun by someone else's state and protects theirs from your overmanagement. Now, why does this work? When you hold a limit, you down-regulate stress by reducing cognitive load. Your prefrontal cortex doesn't have to juggle hypervigilance, people-pleasing, and self-betrayal all at once. So, clear limits can conserve executive resources for discernment, for language and steady voice, which is exactly what keeps hard conversations humane and what stops it turning into a screaming match. So over time, boundaries strengthen attachment because they teach the relationship predictability, where you end and I begin, what is mine to carry and what is not. That is differentiation in action, the cornerstone of secure relating. And now let's recruit your body as an ally, because your body already knows your no. It has been signaling it for years. So we can use a somatic or a body anchor. So if you want to, you can close your eyes or just lower your gaze for a minute and bring to mind a time when you said yes, but you said no. And how you felt in that moment, how you felt in your body. And now scan your body, your jaw, your throat, your chest, your gut, your shoulders. Where do you feel the first early signs of that boundary alarm going off? Is it a chest tightening? A shallow inhale? Is it your stomach dropping? Is it maybe a heat behind your eyes? Just name it quietly. Tight chest, that's my no. Stomach dropping, that's my no. So you can open your eyes again whenever you're ready. From now on, treat that sensation as your dashboard light like on your car. When it flicks on, you pause. Hand to heart, soften your jaw, do your compassionate gesture, and lengthen your exhale. Pairing a compassionate physical gesture with an assertive behavior conditions your system to experience boundaries as safe, not dangerous. So self-soothing and self-assertion join together. So we'll do a quick little activity to lock this in. You can use one of the blank sheets in front of you, or it is on the second last page of the handout, but it has 5 steps to it. So first, we're going to name the stuck spot. So I want you to write one situation where guilt often just keeps you from saying no. Is it when you're asked something at work? Maybe a demand from family. Maybe it's a friend dynamic. And be specific. Write down the person, the context that it's usually in, and maybe the typical script that you hear from that person. And then once we've done that, we're going to move on to step 2, which is surfacing the fear honestly. So answer the question, what am I afraid will happen if I set this boundary? And some common answers are, they'll be disappointed. They'll withdraw. They'll be angry with me. They'll talk about me. I'll look selfish. Put it on paper. Fear named is fear contained. And then we're going to do step 3, and we're going to name the gain. So what would protecting this part of me make possible? Will you get better sleep at night? Have more presence and time with your kids? Maybe you'll produce higher quality work at your job. Maybe you'll just have less resentment. Write the positive return on your boundary. Your motivation expands where your values are clear. And then step 4. We're going to script your one sentence. So that's that short, kind, clear, now sentence. So I'll put on screen some examples. So you can use these frames and maybe customize them to fit you. And keep it under 15 words. That's the short bit. And try to remove apologies. That's just the guilt coming back in. But keep your warmth in your tone. So this is micro boundary at work. It's light, swift, and present tense. So try to craft your sentence. All right, and then we'll move on to step 5, which is going to be installing a compassionate pair. Choose something, a bodily sensation or a somatic pair that works for you. A lot of people say just a hand on the heart works for them. For some people, it's, rubbing an arm or something that signals to you calm and relaxation for your body. And then, once you've found that, do whatever it is, hand on heart, rubbing, bringing your hands together, whatever it is, and then silently to yourself read your sentence while feeling yourself holding that compassionate somatic pair. And then read it again more slowly, feeling that bodily sensation. We are rewiring the guilt safety loop. It's assertiveness with soothing. It is truth with care. With repetition, this teaches your body that no can coexist with connection. So as often as you can, I encourage you to repeat your sentence with your soothing gesture. Because remember, behavior trains faster than talk. So if your boundary is no calls after 7, let tonight's call roll over to voicemail and reply again in 9 o'clock in the morning. Your system and the relationship both learn from contingency. So make your gate policy explicit. This is also in your handout. So you have 2 columns. You're going to have what opens the gate. So maybe they ask in advance. They respect your time. They own their mistakes. And then versus what closes the gate. Yelling, intoxication, threats, repeated boundary testing. And then decide your corresponding behavior. Are you going to leave? Will you end the call? Will you reschedule? Clarity here reduces your anxiety because future you is already prepared and protected. So keep pairing that gesture with the sentence. And you can use any of these gate policies as well, because this is how compassion and assertiveness become a single movement in your body. So now that we've embodied a boundary, we'll prepare for the moment the boundaries often wobble with pushback. So we can expect it, we can plan for it, and we can keep the bridge to real connection intact. Because let's say you're in a dance recital and you start changing your steps. The dance changes, and the other dancer notices. Expect pushback when you grow boundaries, because human systems prefer the familiar. Families, friends, and teams, they all seek homeostasis. Your new no disrupts an old equilibrium. So the system tries to tug you back with guilt, silence, anger, coercion, logic bombs, maybe sweetened persuasion. And that turbulence is predictable. It's also something you can absolutely survive. So here's the reframe that's going to keep you steady in these times, in these moments. Pushback is not proof that you're being selfish or that you're doing something wrong. It's proof that the pattern is recalibrating. So think of your no as a training cue. People learn how to treat you based on your consistency over time. So if you hold the line kindly and clearly, the relationship learns your new operating instructions. So if you wobble, the old pattern reloads. It's behavior, far more than words, that teaches. And under the surface, a guilt-fear loop hijacks your body. Someone looks disappointed. Your nervous system flags that as danger. And you scramble to relieve that by people-pleasing. Your task isn't to be tougher in these moments. It's to tell your system that discomfort does not mean I'm in danger. And we use here and now pain, which is the awkward moment of holding that line, which is immediate pain, to prevent faraway pain, which could be months or years of resentment, burnout, or self-betrayal. Short discomfort for long-term relief. That's wise suffering. Still suffering, but it's wise. And here's a metaphor that I want you to carry. So let's say you reset the aircon or thermostat like we just did before. The unit will probably roar for a moment and sounds a little bit upset. And the room temperature doesn't really feel like it's changed at all until it does. And that noise from the unit is not proof that it can't do the job and it's failing. It's just recalibration. So hold your setting. The system will settle. And we can make a pushback plan to make that resistance boring and predictable. So we don't argue with the weather, right, or any natural disaster. We prepare for it. So we've got to name the pattern. Pre-write your line like we did before, and pre-choose your self-soothing method. And repeat it until it's muscle memory. So predict the pattern by naming the weather. So common pushback styles that you might recognize is the guilt trip. After everything I've done for you, you're the only one who can help. Or maybe they just use anger and volume and they just raise their voice at you, make rapid demands, and coerce you with urgency. Maybe they just use minimalizing or logic. It's not a big deal, you're just overreacting. Or endless debates to just wear you down. Maybe martyrdom, maybe giving you sighs and long faces, saying, don't worry about me, I'll manage. Or maybe they just use silence or withdraw, giving you the cold shoulder so that you end up chasing them. Or maybe they just test the fence and with repeated small violations to see if you'll enforce it just this once. Remember that these are homeostasis behaviors, trying to keep everything the same as it was. Naming the pattern diffuses its magic. So we got to script your calm response. That's short, kind, clear now. And maybe you need a few of them for different situations, for different scenarios. So you can also pair support, empathy, and truth, SET, we call it SET, it's up in the guilt trip one, with a concise boundary. You can regulate the process with when needed. So with timeouts, no yelling, one topic at a time. So if they use a guilt trip, you can use that SET method. You can say, look, I appreciate how much you've done for me. Support. I hear this is really disappointing. Empathy. I'm not available tonight. I can help Saturday for 1 hour. Truth. So you can still make it kind. If they use anger or volume, you can process the boundary first, saying, look, I want to talk, but I won't do it while we're yelling. Let's pause 20 minutes and try again. And if the yelling resumes, just say, look, I'm ending this now. Let's check in back tomorrow at 10. If they're using minimalizing or logic with you, just exit the debate. Look, we see things differently, and my boundary stands. I'm offline after 7, I'll reply in the morning. If they use martyrdom, you can use empathy and limits. So I get this is hard, I really do. I still can't take this on. And I trust you'll find a way. If it helps, I can send you 2 resources. Or if they use silence and withdrawal, you gotta maintain your offer and don't chase. Look, I'm here when you need to talk. My decision is the same. If they constantly fence test with you, you gotta have a consistency mantra, saying, as a reminder, I don't discuss this. If it comes up again, I'll end the conversation. Then follow through kindly once and immediately. Your tone here does the heavy lifting, as I was saying before. A warm voice with firm content and just a few words. Don't over-justify or over-explain. You're modeling drama-free, capable, conflict-capable relating. And end with a self-soothing ritual to close your loop. Because after any boundary moment, especially if it rattles you, you've got to complete the stress cycle, because otherwise it gets stuck in your body and can show up in other ways like anxiety. So what can you do for your body in those moments? You can use 60 seconds of psychological sighs. I have that in the book as well, but it's it's those 2 little sighs. A little top up at the end is a really good one. Or you can just take a brisk walk. For the mind, use a 2-line journal. What I did well, what I'll repeat next time. And for connection, you can text a safe person like, hey, just held my boundary, my heart's racing, but it's starting to settle now. Pairing assertiveness of holding the line with these soothing gestures reconditions your nervous system. Because by using soothing gestures after holding the line, you are directly telling your body and mind and nervous system, I can hold my truth and stay safe. So over repetitions, the guilt alarm gets quieter and your baseline becomes a calm authority. And so let's talk a little bit more about what happens after you set a boundary, because that's really important. The work of boundaries isn't usually in that first no. It's in what you do next. The maintenance, the emotional pacing, and the grace to stay steady when that air gets really thick. So we don't want to confuse drama with conflict. Drama and conflict are not the same species. Drama is chaos. It's fast, performative, designed to pull you out of yourself, and it feeds on reactivity and making it a spectacle. Conflict, by contrast, can be caring and contained. It is truth that's spoken with structure. And so here's what the research and practice both show. When you hold process boundaries, like no yelling, one topic at a time, and maybe time-limited discussions, you invite maturity into the conversation. These boundaries are not about control. They are about preserving co-regulation with that person. So conflict only becomes unsafe, and not because the truth is hard, but because the container collapses. By rebuilding the container, saying no yelling, keep it one topic, let's just do it within 20 minutes, talk about it for 20 minutes, that's building a container. You are aiming, so you're not aiming for the content, right, as much, you're aiming for the process and securing that process. A calm conversation is a structure that you can build. And the boundary isn't what you say, it's in how you hold the space while saying it. And so one clear line beats 5 explanations any day. Over-explaining is the nervous system's way of bargaining for safety. If I can make you understand, maybe you'll approve of my choice. But boundaries aren't about that. It's not about philosophy essays. They're behavioral signals. So extra justification only opens the door for negotiation, which isn't what you're after. And negotiation pulls you back into the loop of people-pleasing that you just escaped. So the psychology here is simple. Clarity quietens the system. Confusion fuels the anxiety. When you deliver one short, kind, and clear statement and stop talking, your body learns that peace doesn't come from convincing someone. It comes from coherence within yourself. So silence in that respect is not coldness. It is the sound of self-trust. And what you'll notice is this: the shorter that you can clarify your boundary, the longer the peace lasts. So, if you wobble once, don't stress, just reassert the next time. People often think that one single slip-up ruins their entire progress. It doesn't. Relationships are not trained through perfection. They're trained through contingency. This is a behavioral principle that's used across psychology. Humans learn from consistent consequences. So when you wobble, when you say yes after meaning no, don't spiral into shame. Simply reassert the next time. Your next calm, consistent action rewrites the script faster than guilt ever could. And the nervous system learns by patterns, not by memory. So each repeated follow-through is a microdose of reliability, both for you and for the other person. So that is how trust is rebuilt. It's not by promises, but by predictability. And unfortunately, not every story has a tidy ending. Sometimes boundaries bring beautiful healing. Other times they bring endings. And while closure feels like a reward, in truth, it's often a luxury. Healthy boundaries can, and often do, expose where there was imbalance in the relationship all along. So if your limit causes distance, silence, or even loss for that connection, understand that it's data, it's not a disaster. You're seeing who can meet you at your new level of truth. When that pushback turns into threat, control, or repeated disrespect, your priority is no longer harmony with that person. It's safety. So you've got to step back and call for support where you can and make an exit plan if needed. You can grieve what could have been while still protecting what must remain, which is your well-being, your peace, and your right to exist without fear. Boundaries don't always fix relationships, but they reveal which ones were real. And remember the thermostat. When you change your emotional climate, expect noise. The system that you're a part of, family, friends, or workplace, it is calibrated to a certain temperature. When you reset it, the vents will rumble, the air shifts, and people notice. And that protest isn't proof that you're doing this wrong or you're wrong in doing this. It's evidence that the environment is recalibrating. It's simply just readjusting to the change that you've made. So you've got to hold steady in these times, because in time, the room learns your new temperature. Now, boundaries, they don't cause chaos, but they do reveal it. And once it's revealed, chaos can finally be organized into order, compassion, and truth. The goal of boundary work is not to avoid conflict. It's to flow your energy and your truth through it. You're not building up walls. You're building clarity. You're building containment. And you're building congruence. Every storm that passes with you still standing calm and firm is one more proof for your nervous system and your relationships and your self-respect are learning to live at the same temperature. So if you can breathe through those first 90 seconds of protest, because they are the absolute hardest, you'll often find that the weather changes. You got to hold your line, keep your warmth, and land your day. This is how relationships learn you, and how you learn that your truth can live in the same room as somebody else's feelings. So up till now, we've talked about boundaries as protection and regulation. Now here's a deeper turn that you might have already realized by now. Boundaries create space for your calling and your joy. They don't just keep harm out, they keep you in. Aligned with what is most true, what is most meaningful, and what is most energizing for you. Without them, we live by other people's scripts. Our calendar fills, our center just empties, and our authenticity erodes by 1,000 tiny, okay, fine. Without calm boundaries, our life begins to reflect, or with calm boundaries, our life begins to reflect our values again. So I want you to hear this. If you do not have boundaries, you will be pulled into what other people want. And you'll miss your own path, your own unique calling. Because boundaries, they're not a personality makeover. They're a directional device that keeps you oriented to what matters. And when you move back into your gifting zones, your joy rises. And not because you control the world around you, but because your daily actions sync up with your values. And that's why you feel lighter after a clean no. You've returned to yourself. So the psychology underneath this, self-determination theory, tells us that human motivation blooms when 3 needs are honored. Autonomy, I choose. Competence, I can. And relatedness, I belong. Boundaries are how autonomy is protected in the real world. They conserve time and energy, so your competence can deepen, which is your mastery and flow. And they make relatedness honest rather than resentful. This is why people report feeling more vitality and creativity once they begin holding their limits. They've stopped leaking their own life force into other people and misaligned commitments. So think of it this way. Every enforced boundary is a micro vote for the life you say you want. It's also a neuropsychological lesson. Your system feels the congruence, registers that you are safe, and then relaxes. Over repetitions, that no stops sounding like threat and starts feeling like inner integrity. So you are literally teaching your body that truth is safe. So every time you enforce a boundary, you are teaching your nervous system joy. The signal is, I am safe to choose, safe to be myself. So we can ground this in some real life scenarios. So maybe in work, saying, I can't take this on without moving a deadline. This protects your output and self-respect. Over time, you do less messy work and more deep work. And joy appears here as competence and pride. Maybe in family and relationships, you say, look, I'm happy to come for 2 hours. I'll head off at 3. The visit stays warm because you stayed honest. The joy here is the absence of that post-event resentment hangover. And then for your creative life and purpose, if you create blocks where you can be fully uninterrupted, it's not selfish. It's honoring and growing your skills and your gifts. Boundaries keep you in that challenge skill sweet spot where flow and the meaning that comes with it can really emerge. Maybe in dating and intimacy, respect for your boundaries is a character test for the other person. When someone honors your limits, intimacy becomes safer. When they don't, your boundary just protected your future self from being repeatedly disrespected and walked over. The joy here is the relief of congruence and protecting your future self. And remember, this is compassionate work. The point is not to harden yourself. It is to love truthfully. Boundaries make your yes valuable again. They are how care travels the distance honestly, towards yourself and others, without running you dry. And here's one truth about transformation that few people actually mention. The moment you begin to live with boundaries, you enter a season of in-between. You've stopped overextending, but you haven't yet learnt what ease feels like. You've stopped rescuing, but you haven't yet experienced safety in that stillness yet. That space, it feels like a loss, but it isn't. It is integration that is in process. And what's happening beneath that discomfort is not weakness, it's realignment. Your nervous system and your identity are updating the contract that they once signed between love and self-erasure. For years, your body equated belonging with self-abandonment. Now, each time you hold a limit, you're teaching it a new rule. Love can exist without losing myself. And this isn't about control, it's about congruence. You can think of regulation as the nervous system's experience of truth. In other words, calm isn't achieved through neutrality. It's achieved through alignment. You don't find peace by numbing what you feel. You find it by making sure that your behavior, your values are finally in the same room. And that's the felt sense of authenticity. Your internal systems finally firing in sync. And this leads us to something we haven't named just yet, which is the practice of micro self-trust. Because each time you enforce even just a small boundary, a polite no, a pause before a yes, you're not merely managing behavior, you're rehearsing reliability. You are proving to yourself over and over that your words are safe to believe. It's called training the brain to predict integrity. The repetition matters here. Self-trust is not built in reflection. It's built in the micro moments when your actions align with your truth. Boundaries then are not self-protection. They are self-partnership. They restore a sacred contract between yourself, your intentions, and your execution. They make empathy clean, creativity sustainable, and relationships honest enough to finally just breathe again. Boundaries do not end connection. They begin authentic connection. So when the guilt or doubt rises, remember that what you're feeling isn't failure. It's your system learning a new shape. Truth shaped like peace. And that is an uneasy middle ground. The space between who you were and who you're becoming. That is where congruence is really born. So true closure isn't about memorizing tools or repeating mantras or affirmations. It's about understanding the cycle that makes growth sustainable. So you can think of this principle. Safety is the foundation of change. Boundaries create psychological safety. Safety enables emotional regulation. Regulation creates space for compassion. Compassion builds flexibility. And flexibility sustains transformation. So this is not theory, it is an unspoken law of thriving. When we stop viewing boundaries as rejection and start seeing them as nervous system regulation, we claim our agency over our inner world. A clear no whispers to your subconscious, I am safe even inside this really difficult conversation. And that's what anchors the ventral vagal system, which is basically just your core's inner circuitry of calm connection. Boundaries then are not walls, they're bridges of truth. The structure through which intimacy becomes possible again. Boundaries bring us closer, not further apart. When you act from integrity, you transform pseudo-harmony into authentic connection. And that's the real big paradox. Again, what once felt like distance becomes depth. What once felt like guilt becomes peace. And when you bear witness to another person's pain with empathy and without fixing it, when you let love be presence instead of trying to rescue them, you embody the most advanced form of compassion there is. Co-regulation without control. And that's what psychologist Carl Rogers called empathy without agenda, and what trauma-informed practice calls safe attunement. So here's the final reframe for today. You are not learning boundaries to build up walls. You are learning them to become truer. To love without losing yourself. To stay soft without collapsing. To hold space for both compassion and truth. Because when safety is internalized, boundaries become bridges. When emotion is flexible, reactivity becomes resilience. And when self-worth is embodied, change becomes inevitable. So as you leave tonight, remember, every time you choose truth over guilt, calm over control, or compassion over performance, you are teaching your nervous system the shape of freedom for you. And that in its purest form is what it means to live with love and boundaries while holding hands with others moving forward. So you'll find a QR code on your handouts that links to a free guided breathwork audio I created just for you around boundaries. So you can use it anytime that you feel super just overstepped, or you're just really confused about all this and you need a little bit of pick-me-up. So it's my gift to you guys for coming today. It'll also be up on YouTube. And if this resonated, you're welcome to stay connected. I run regular monthly sessions like this. I will be continuing into next year. I'm currently doing up the plan and the schedule for next year, so that'll be out next week. So thank you guys so much for coming here today.